Let's talk about something you probably don't think about, but use every single day. We're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden story behind the stuff that powers, well, everything. Seriously, just think about it for a sec. That EV you're dreaming of, the phone that's probably in your hand right now, even the huge wind turbines and solar panels we're counting on, what do they all have in common? Turns out, it's a very specific, hidden connection. Because the stuff that powers your gadgets, well, it's also fueling a massive global power play. And this isn't something new. It's a strategy that's been quietly unfolding for decades, and it's created this tangled web of control that, believe it or not, affects every single one of us. Okay, so to really get what's going on here, we have to start at the source. We've got to look at this absolutely explosive demand for a few very specific, and I mean very crucial, raw materials. Look at this list. EVs, smartphones, green tech, these industries are just blowing up, right? And their growth, all of it, hinges on a special class of materials. They're literally the invisible engines driving our world, from the battery in your car to the guts of your phone. So what are we talking about? We're talking about what are known as rare metals. And for this explainer, we're going to zoom in on one key player, cobalt. Why cobalt? Because it is absolutely essential for the high-powered batteries we all rely on. And trust me, the story of cobalt, it pretty much is the story of this whole global power game. Okay, so where on earth does all this critical cobalt come from? Well, the answer points us to one single country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah, just look at that number, a whopping 70%. That's not a typo. 70% of the entire world's cobalt comes out of the DRC. That's not just a big slice of the pie, that's basically the whole pie. And it means one thing. If you control the cobalt in the Congo, you control the world's supply. Simple as that. And that brings us to the main player in this story. See, this whole situation, it didn't just happen by accident. Nope. It's the result of a very deliberate, very calculated, long-term strategy. One that's been quietly executed for over 2 decades by China. You can see how it played out here. It all kicked off back in the early 2000s. China starts pouring huge amounts of money into Africa, framing it all as economic cooperation. But pretty soon, the real endgame became crystal clear. Lock down long-term access to Africa's incredible mineral wealth, especially those rare metals we talked about. And their approach was, honestly, brilliant. Just a simple 3-step playbook. Step 1, secure the mining rights. We're talking long-term contracts, sometimes for 30 years plus. Step 2, build the infrastructure needed to get the minerals out. So roads, railways, ports, all pointed toward the coast. And then step 3, this was the real genius move. Ship all the raw stuff back home to China to refine it. That way, they control the valuable, finished product. But here's where it gets really clever and kind of concerning. Look at how these deals were structured. A lot of the contracts used what's called fixed-rate pricing. Now, what does that mean? It means that if the price of cobalt suddenly shoots through the roof on the world market, the DRC and its people, they don't see a single extra penny. All that extra profit just flows right out of the country. So, you've got this economic setup, but that's really only half the story. Because this kind of global dominance, it comes at a huge price. A very real human and environmental cost that's paid by the people right there on the ground. And this really lays it out, the difference between the sales pitch and the reality. That infrastructure investment, well, turns out it's just to serve the mines and the ports, not the actual communities. The capital for the mines, we already saw how the profits don't get shared. And those political alliances, they often end up silencing anyone who tries to speak out. And this is the true price. We're talking about reports from journalists and aid groups that describe just awful, unsafe working conditions. There are even consistent reports of child labor in some of the smaller, unregulated mines. And because of the political situation, it's incredibly hard for these stories to even get out. On top of all that, the mining itself can pollute the water and the soil, which is a disaster for people's health and their ability to grow food. So the impact on the ground it's just devastating. But all of this control at the source, is exactly what makes the next phase of the strategy possible, taking control of the entire global supply. Check out this supply chain. You've got extraction, refining, and then manufacturing. The absolute key here is that middle step, refining and processing. By dominating that one single stage, Chinese companies basically become the gatekeepers for the whole world. So it doesn't matter if you're a tech giant in California or a car maker in Germany, you need that processed cobalt and you have to go through China to get it.
So, you see, this isn't just about making money. This is a textbook example of what's called strategic resource domination. It's having the power to control the flow and the price of a material that the entire global economy desperately needs. That's not just business. That is some serious geopolitical power.
So where does this leave the African nations at the heart of all this? Well, it puts them in an incredibly tough spot with some really critical choices to make about their own future. Think about it. They're often coming to the negotiating table without a lot of leverage. Sometimes there's political instability that foreign interests can, take advantage of. When there's no real legal transparency, how can you be sure you're getting a fair deal? The end result is this constant pressure to just keep shipping out raw materials, which makes it almost impossible to build up a sustainable economy that actually benefits the people who live there. And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty uncomfortable question. Look, the world's demand for green energy, for EVs, for better tech, it's not slowing down. If anything, it's speeding up. But as we all race towards this greener, cleaner future, we really have to stop and ask ourselves, who is actually paying the price for it?